Okay, so welcome everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for taking time out this Sunday afternoon to join us for our first of our many monthly series on health and nutrition. I would like to get started. Today we are going to talk about winter wellness, and happy to have Dr. Jamie Epstein, a close friend and collaborator, join me today for this workshop. I would like to start out by just having a quick poll, um, a few questions. I would like this to be interactive and have dialogues. If you have questions, you could write them in the chat or the Q&A, and we will answer them as we proceed. So I am going to launch a quick poll. So if everyone could take the poll. I would like this to be interactive and have dialogue. If you have questions, you could write them in the chat. I'll leave it up for a bit. I'll give it a minute.
We're live now, correct?
Yes, we are. I'm just launching the poll. I have three questions that we could discuss. Voting. You can write them in the chat or the Q&A, and we will answer them as we proceed. So I am going to launch a quick poll. If everyone could take the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll. Yes, I would like to see share the results. We'll answer them as we proceed. So I am going to launch a quick. Okay. I hear myself echoing.
I just turned off my phone. I wanted to see it live.
Okay. So the first question was, are winter blues real? Yes or no? And then the second question was, how does winter affect you the most? Is it your mood and your mindset, physical, or both? And the third question, do you find it hard to stay healthy and positive during the winter months? So I don't know if everyone voted, but we could get started. So are the winter blues real? What do you guys think?
Well, yes. I mean, I've worked with people over the years who find that staying cooped up to a certain point kind of brings their mood down, not being able to get outside. I know when I came back from the Caribbean, I hadn't seen snow in like 4 years, and I came back, it was snowing here, and I was stuck inside. So my mindset changed. That's one of the biggest things that happens is the mindset changes a little bit when people feel cooped up and not able to do things. The funny thing about that, sex evolves, believe it or not. People make love a lot more, and and all of a sudden when the spring comes up, you have babies popping up. So yeah, there are different ways that people cope with the winter blues and depression and anxiety and stress. So yeah, it's real.
Okay, great. So we could talk more about that in a little bit. Thank you. So just a little bit about me. My name is Myrna Tamal. I am a research scientist and a holistic nutritionist and health and wellness coach. I worked in science for over 25 years, and I wanted to integrate my background with science and nutrition to help people live a better life. Overall, conventional medicine is great, but they focus more on like drugs and fixing ailments once they become, a real problem for patients. And I wanted to focus on prevention. And by doing that is like basic principles of natural healing, you know, harness the healing power of nature, identify the causes, treat the person as a whole, not just parts, and to just bring awareness through teaching and overall prevention. So today we're going to talk about the winter wellness. So I'm going to focus a bit about how to take care of your body, by boosting your immune system, your digestion, and I'll give you a few points on things that you could do in terms of like certain types of herbs or spices, which would be helpful. What foods are in season. Dr. Jamie Epstein is going to talk to you a little bit more about the mental emotional health that we touched on about the winter blues. And he's also a trained therapist with specializing in clinical hypnosis and hypnotherapy. So he will enlighten us a bit on those topics as well. So boosting your immunity. So why is it important to boost your immunity during the winter? As we mentioned before, you know, winter does affect your mood, and there is a physiological effect. You tend to have less sunlight and decrease serotonin and melatonin, which does affect your mood and your physical body as well. So you the weather's harsher, so your skin is drier, and we're more prone to have colds and flus, and as we mentioned, is more stressful. And the reduced sunlight, especially now during COVID, we've been inside more, we have less vitamin D. And there are also changing sleep patterns because your circadian rhythms and your sleep patterns change with the change in the season and sunlight exposure. So an important thing to focus on is taking care of our digestion. And why is this important? When it's cold, lower temperatures reduce our body heat. And once your body heat is lower, this also slows down your metabolism. And then your digestive system become more sluggish. And your microbiome, which consists of good and bad bacteria, your healthy bacteria grow at a slower rate because they need warmer temperatures. So it's important to have a healthy microbiome, especially during the winter. And as a side note, 80% of your immune system is in your gut. So if you put that in combination, if you have a slow digestion, a reduced metabolism, it's cold, you're more prone to get sick. So it's important to take care of your body. So I'm going to touch a little bit about how we could do that in terms of nutrition. You could eat like certain foods which are in season. So winter veggies and greens, spices and herbs, and high fiber foods would actually help with your digestion. So nutrition, some foods which are great during the winter are the root vegetables, which are listed here, like carrots, potatoes, sweet potatoes, parsnips, and beets. So for example, these foods are good because they're more hardy and they grow and they could withstand the cold temperatures. For example, kale is a very sturdy vegetable, and mustard greens and like turnips and winter squash or Brussels sprouts, they're high in vitamins and they have higher nutrient content. So every season is good to eat the foods that are in season based on how they grow and their availability. So one thing you should avoid is cold and raw food because when your body is cold and you're eating cold raw food, your digestion and your stomach tends to cramp up, and it requires more energy to heat your internal system. One side note, you could try like clarifying butter, like ghee. It's a good example because it helps feed the healthy bacteria in your gut. Some of the fruits which are important during this time is the ones high in vitamin C, D, zinc, folic acid, and the Bs. And the fruits that are in season now are like the grapefruits are good, kiwi, oranges, pomegranates, apple, and bananas and pears, and there's some others as well. It's important to also eat lean meat, such as turkey or chicken. They have good protein and fats, which are good, and it's a great time to make stews and soups. So in terms of a few spices and herbs, so spices are great because they add flavor, but certain spices and herbs actually help with your overall immune system along with other benefits. For example, ginger will help with cholesterol, but is also an anti-inflammatory, and it helps boost your immune system. Cinnamon is great as well because it's a warming spice and it helps with your sugar levels. Cardamom, it's great for your metabolism. There's others like turmeric, is like a super herb, and there's other herbs that are not mentioned here, like clove and cayenne pepper, garlic, aniseed, or fennel. These are all warming herbs that will help boost your internal body temperature and help with inflammation and reducing your risk of getting sick. So that's just a little tidbit on your nutrition health, and we could go into more later on. But I would like to introduce Dr. Jamie Epstein, who is a physician with professional life coaching certification and coaching since 1988. So Dr. Jamie is all yours.
Thank you, Manuel. Very, very good. Good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Winter Wellness. I'm Dr. Jamie Epstein, a practicing therapist since 1988, where I came to New York. I'm also a certified health and wellness coach, also a certified hypnotherapist. And I'm going to talk a little bit about hypnotherapy, and I also train people to become certified coaches. One of the things that people mistakenly understand is that there's several types of hypnosis. There's a stage hypnotist who basically is a show. For example, let's say you go on a cruise and you spend $1,000 to go on a cruise and they have a show. They usually have what they call John Doe's, the stage hypnotist. He's there for a show. You have a couple things in place there that get in the way of reality. You have fun and games and you have alcohol. So you're sitting in the audience, let's say you're a bunch of dentists, let's say. And so Bimbo the magician or John Doe the magician comes out and he's going to talk about hypnosis. What he's doing, he cracks a couple of jokes, he says some real things to get your attention, but he's also looking for the playful individual who wants to play. Basically, he's looking to see who's going to join him. And so with the alcohol and the playful stage, he sets out these particular statements and it gets your attention. So finally, once he realizes who's going to play, he gets you to a certain point where he says, okay, I'm going to bring up, I'd like to have 10 volunteers come up on stage. And so you have people pointing at each other, laughing and joking stuff. So you get 10 people up on stage. So now he says, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hypnotize you. And as I hypnotize you, I'm going to turn you into chickens. Now he pauses for a second. Why does he pause? Because he wants to see who's going to play. Who's the child up there is going to play? And then you hear from the audience, we know, Susan, you're going to do it, and this and that. And you hear Bob says, I know, John, you're going to do it. Now, these are people that are on stage and people in the audience who are playing with each other. Now, finally, he makes them kind of relax and joking mood and gets them to relax and stuff. Then he hypnotizes them. So let's say 1, 2, 3, you hypnotize. Now, I'm going to hypnotize you again to a deeper state. I'm going to have you turn to a chicken and cluck like a chicken. And so once he does that, hypnotizes you and says, 1, 2, 3, hypnotize, you're going to cook like a chicken. Dead silence. All of a sudden, you hear bark, 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 bark. One person starts the series. Now, that little child wants to be heard, wants to be seen. So the next child says, hey, I'm not going to let him outplay me, so I'm going to do the same thing. And so all of a sudden, you have 4 or 5 people clucking like chickens, and the whole stage was clucking like chickens. Now, you got to remember now, these are professional people. So now he steps back, his job is done. Now he brings him out of trance. And basically it's a trance state we don't talk about. Now he says, do you folks think you cluck like chickens? They're going to say, no, we're professional people. And then you hear from the audience, we saw you dancing on the stage, John. We saw you, Susan, clucking like chickens. We saw you. Now, what he's done is giving the child part of them in a trance state to play, to show themselves. So the important piece to understand here is that what's being done in a trance state. For example, you are in a trance state right now, you just don't know it. It's important to understand trance behavior. The trance state that you're currently in is called an intellectual stimuli. You're listening to me talk about a particular topic that may or may not interest you, but the fact of it is, your unconscious mind knows it's true 100% of the time, and your conscious mind doesn't. So we work with both. Now, With that said, I'm medically and clinically trained in clinical hypnosis, what they call Ericksonian hypnosis. Okay, Myrna, would you go to the next slide, please? Okay, here we go. The first person up here that you're looking at is a person that I'd worked with over a period of time that had an addiction issue and also a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And so what am I doing here? I did what we call a progressive regression to a certain point, because one of the topics that came up was some of the anxiety and stress in his childhood that got him to use some type of substance. And so the reason why I did the progressive regression was to get him to understand that I was going to work with his unconscious mind on that level. And I gave him an exercise that set the stage. For example, I'm going to give you the same exercise. Don't intellectualize it. Don't try to overcompensate with it. Just answer the questions. Just very simple 2 questions. Okay, everyone understand that?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. 2 questions. Number 1, how much is 1 and 1?
Anyone can answer?
Yeah, everyone can answer, sure. How much is 1 and 1?
I would say 2.
Okay. Do you walk to school or carry your lunch?
Say it again.
Do you walk to school or carry your lunch? You see, what happens, everyone, what happens is people pause. Even though they know the answer, they pause because they want to intellectualize it. Like, they don't want to sound stupid. It's not a stupid question. Basically, it's the first answer. The first one is what we call a progressive regression. What I asked you was how much is 1 and 1 in the current time. You didn't learn that equation 1 and 1 equals 2 in the current time. You learned it as a child. So your unconscious mind went back to regress or to a remembrance of that point in time. So if I was working on particular topics of that with your unconscious, I would ask specific questions for specific times from your unconscious mind to take back to work with some of those areas. And that's one of the things I started to do with him. I set the stage to work with some of the anxiety and stresses that he felt that he was using, why he was using some type of substances and why his anxiety was so high in the present day and age. Now, the second question was, do you walk to school or carry your lunch? Well, you walk to school as a child, obviously, which is also a part of a regression, but walking to school and carry your lunch also is a confusing state. I confuse the conscious mind to get it out the way. The conscious mind gets out the way because it doesn't know what's true. Once you get the conscious mind out the way, then we can work specifically in detail with the unconscious mind. Now, any questions so far with that?
So how do you get your conscious mind out of the way? I guess that's when you induce hypnosis.
Well, it's all part of the hypnosis aspect. We put in what we call a confused or confused state. For example, do you walk to school or carry your lunch? Walking to school is a progressive regression. Carry your lunch, what conscious mind's going to go, what's he talking about? I don't care, So it goes, I'm out of here. Once it gets confused, it's out of the way, and then you work specifically with the unconscious mind. Any questions so far? Now, in this state, it's a state of emotional and physical relaxation where I facilitate a deeper trance state on multiple levels, a physical level and/or a hypnotherapeutic level, which allows the patient to go to wherever they want to work with at any point in time. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Whenever you do any hypnosis, hypnotherapy, you must always have a safety net or a safe place. In that safe place, we always work with the adult first and the child second. The reason being is because the adult takes care of the child and the child has to be in a safe place as well. So they have a separate state. Now, when I was working back in the late 80s, early 90s, I used to teach a lot of social workers, other psychologists and psychiatrists to work with clinical hypnosis, hypnotherapy through pain management, substance abuse, domestic violence, things of that nature. So these are some of the skills and tools that have been used over the years. Now, life will bring you a lot of pain, but your responsibility to create joy. And that's the difference, is to create a sense of reality that allows that person to work in a certain form of reality. In the here and now. And the here and now is the reality that they're working in. Now, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. This gentleman on top is called Dr. Milton H. Erickson. H. Erickson. He was a psychiatrist who had cerebral palsy and also was in a wheelchair. And what he did, he created a client center type of hypnotherapy. I'm Eric Sony, I'm medically trained and clinically trained. There's a foundation in Arizona that works under him. He's deceased now, but he opened up the door for hypnotherapy worldwide. And I gave a lot of credit to the value of hypnotherapy. A lot of therapists use hypnotherapy that are trained clinically and medically with that. Second of all, now, any questions with that so far?
So what's the difference between clinical hypnosis and hypnotherapy? Are they the same or are they?
Well, one's more of a clinical issue. Hypnotherapy can be used as a more of a relaxed issue. It can relax emotionally and also relax physically as well. Clinical side would be like when I'm working like this particular person here, who's also had an issue with substance abuse. And so we separate the two, the demons, we separate the two and have them look at what we call imagery and visualization. That's more of a clinical aspect of working with the individual. Here, what we did is he wanted to understand more deeply of his reasons for using. Now, he understood intellectually, but there was a block where he didn't quite understand why he started with the substance. So what we did is we created a television set. And in that television set, we created the fact that allowed him to look at himself at a distance. Now, the important thing I wanted him to look at are several things: who, what, where, when, why, and how it all started. Now, in that safety net, all the demons don't come up, they're blocked because the safety keeps those demons down. It allows you to look at something and to re-educate yourself with old material with new learnings and new material with new learnings. And so as he talks to me outside the trance and I take my notes, then I can deliver certain information in that trance state that allows him to look more clearly at what he wants to work with. And it's really up to the client. I have no control of the trance state. It's the client. He hears my voice for nurturing and support, or she hears my voice for nurturing support. And the important part of that is to keep them in control and understanding what their needs are. Any questions so far?
This is really interesting. So do you think like hypnotherapy would be great for people who are experiencing winter blues? Like we touched on that in the beginning. Like how would you approach someone with hypnotherapy who's suffering from like winter blues?
Well, it depends what they're presenting at the moment. When you say winter blues, that could be very, very broad. If a person was saying they're coming in and they find that they have a lot of anxiety, that they're eating a lot. Okay, I'd find out what they're eating, what their motivation for eating. Most important, I'd find out who is eating. Is the adult part of that's eating out of the anxiety stress, or is it the child part of it? And how do I do that? By asking specific and very detailed questions about each part of what they have presented. So once I find out, well, let's say it's Joan and she's talking about emotionally eating and stuff. Well, I would find out when did she realize she first started emotionally eating. Okay, let's say she says, when I'm sitting home, I'm emotionally eating late at night, I'm eating ice cream, cookies and candies. Okay, now a skilled therapist would say something like this. So you started at home, correct? You said. She would say yes. I said, any other time that you realized that you may have eaten these cookies and ice cream? Was there anything in your young adult or your childhood, any particular thing that gave you pleasure? And she may say, oh yes, when I was a kid, I used to always want to eat ice cream and candy when I was finding myself I'm not happy in school. That gives me a clue. So it's not just in the current moment, it's also in her childhood. So we'd have her go back and look at that and address those issues and begin to bring it forward to why she's doing it at the present time. That's the clinical aspect of hypnotherapy.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, now, when you work with children, okay, can we go back to that slide where we have the child in there, if you wouldn't mind? When you work with children, you want to do it in a way that's basically a play therapy. I belong to the International Association of Play Therapists when I was in California. And one of the reasons why I use hypnosis for children can do with anxiety, can do with bullying, it could be stress, bedwetting, it could be all types of things. But the important part is to understand what that child is really saying to you and how he or she is saying to you. So you want to make it fun, you want to make it educational, and you want to do a lot of playing. And it allows them to play out the fantasies and be able to recognize what they're saying, understand what they're saying, and get a better grasp of how to become better at the anxiety and stress and how to move through it when they begin to face it again. It could be bad marks in school. It could be not understanding certain things. It could be ADD, ADHD. It could be a number of different things. But the important thing is to not shame them, not to have them feel shameful, but to make it fun and educational. Okay, any other questions? Now, I think there's one more slide of Dr. Erickson, I believe. I'm not
Um,
mistaken.
No, I think that was, it was.
That was it? Okay, that's great. That's great.
So I have a question in terms of like emotional eating, and especially now that we're in the age of COVID and we've been isolated, now it's getting cold. Do you think people will be emotionally eating, and does it revert back to like childhood comforts or childhood anxiety? Like you mentioned, like separating the child from the adult while someone's under hypnosis.
Again, it depends on instant part of your first part of your question. It's possible, but see, I have to understand personally and clinically what they're presenting. If you give me an example, then I can be more specific about it, because it may not always be the child aspect. It may be just the adult that's going through that. So once I understand the example of what the person may be presenting to me, then I can get a better understanding of how to work with that individual. Because it isn't always the child, isn't always the adult. Sometimes it's a combination of both, or one or the other.
Okay, so does this apply to like consuming alcohol? Like I know everyone's working at home or stressed out, and they might have an urge to drink more alcohol. How does that? How would you explain that?
Well, you start talking about addictions to numb different types of pain, to replace what's going on in the moment, to replace the anxiety that they feel in the moment. So they want to, that's called dumbing down the pain. When a person's inhibitions are let down, what happens? All types of other things enter into that. And so when the inhibitions let down, the individual begins to work in a different frame, a different mindset. And that different mindset allows them to dumb down the particular feelings or the voices in their head in the moment, are not feeling that being overwhelmed or stressed out. So when you start talking about addiction, it may not always be an addiction at that point in time. It may just be in that moment of dumbing down the pain that allows them to not feel what they're experiencing in the moment. Not necessarily doesn't mean that's always going to be an addiction issue. It could be, depending on if it affects the social, emotional, spiritual, or financial or family issues of their life. Then it becomes an issue that should be addressed, the possibility of an addiction.
Okay, that makes sense. So I think I wanted to open it up for questions, just so I wanted to have more of a dialogue. So just to do a quick recap in terms of the nutrition part, and then Jamie, you could give a recap about the emotional health. For nutrition, I mean, as I mentioned before, your metabolism slows down, and you need to like boost your immunity by eating certain fruits and vegetables which are high in vitamin C, D, zinc, and magnesium. Magnesium is also a calming mineral. And then eat seasonal foods like root vegetables or high vegetables high in phytonutrients like kale, or fruits that are in season like pear, and warming herbs like clove and chamomile tea and ginger tea and turmeric. So overall, just to keep in mind for in terms of nutrition, that your metabolism slows down, you get less serotonin, you get less vitamins because you are enclosed, and you just need to be more mindful of the types of food that you put into your body. Um, Now, I wanted to open it up for questions, Q&A, if anyone had any questions. And Jamie, you could give us a little bit background and like, what are some tips you could recommend for dealing with like the winter blues?
Well, first of all, understand what you really want, what's really going on. Am I making excuses to do something in an area in which this wants to make me feel good in the moment? Am I looking for immediate gratification? Am I looking for long-term gratification? What is it I'm really looking to do at that point in time? So it's really important to understand what you're experiencing and why you're experiencing. What is the circumstances that you're involved in that's causing the moment to feel in the moment that you honestly feel. So that's one important thing. And then once you understand that, then speak to somebody about this. There's nothing wrong with speaking with somebody about it. A life coach, a hypnotherapist, a therapist. It depends on what's going on in your life at that moment to get an objective point of view that will help you not only understand it, but also begin to move beyond it and not let it overwhelm you or consume you. And that's the biggest thing about it, is to talk about it. Understand what's really going on. Allow yourself another set of feelings, not just the one that you're involved with that overwhelms you, but to understand clearly to prevent it from overwhelming you and making poor choices. So that's what I would suggest that individual or individuals do.
Okay, great. So, we'll open it up for questions. If anyone have any questions, we'll be happy to answer any questions right now. No? Okay, I guess there's no questions.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jamie, you started the conversation before we we started the winter wellness talk.
Yes.
So let's revisit. So you were talking about winter blues and that it really was, you were giving a story or your anecdote about what was going on and how you felt. And that it like what studies have shown. Could we revisit that conversation?
Well, specifically, what are you asking? What are you looking for? Give me more information that can help you with that.
Okay. I guess the question is, you said other people found other ways to cope with winter blues.
Yeah, a lot. Some people think it's funny, but it's really not. But you've heard the saying that there are more babies born in the springtime, and you have to ask yourself why. Because over the winter, people are having a lot of sex to a certain point, because that's one way of coping with the winter blues. Believe it or not, people end up spending a lot of money. They spend a lot of money online. People end up drinking. People doing a lot of drugs because they're stuck in the situation. Now, there are other people who are just happy just resting with the winter blues, who find themselves sleeping more, getting more hours of sleep. There are some people who do more workout. In our building, you hear people always going to the second and third floor where our gym is. And you see them when you're going in and out, always dressed in their workout clothes. So there are positives and there are negatives in the winter blues to a certain point. It all depends on what your mindset is and how you wish to handle it. If you have a healthy, good mindset, you find other coping ways to do. To not eat so much, not to drink so much. So you find these are better ways of coping by allowing yourself to look at what's really going on in your life and what you really want to do, as far as not spending money, as far as not drinking and hanging out, but eating healthier, making soups, eating, enjoying life, enjoying the winter, taking walks, things like that. So it really depends on your mindset.
So have you found that during the pandemic, I guess this is now, now it's not winter blues, it's COVID blues.
Mm-hmm.
have you found that this is like now a broad term of, of I don't want to call it an illness, but just something that people are going through and they're using the same mechanisms as winter blues to cope, or are you finding like that they're finding other ways to cope?
I'm finding a lot of people are very angry. I'm seeing that I work in the office one day a week now. I was two, but I'm working one day a week, and the rest of the way I do it telehealth, online. And I'm finding that people are angry and they're questioning, is this a real thing? Even though they're seeing people die, the hospitals overwhelmed, and even though intellectually they see this, they still confront the situation of, is it really true? And so there's a bit of confusion, a lot of anger there. Now, my thinking on that is, why? Why, if you've seen a lot of people die and you're seeing a lot of hospitals being overwhelmed, a lot of people find themselves being forced to wear a mask in public. And you're seeing all the time, people are arguing, I got a health condition, I got that, I got this. Well, again, people are angry because they're feeling forced to do the thing. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying a lot of things are changing. There's something going on that's changing that's making people feel so stressed out that they're so stressed that they find themselves becoming very angry, in some cases even violent. So yeah, I see a big difference in this. I see there is a lot of people feeling so stressed out that's affecting their mental health and their physical health. They're losing interest in different activities they once enjoyed. They have low energies. There's a lot of things that are going on. They have difficulty having conversations. I mean, I was watching I was watching, excuse me, New Year's Eve, and normally would be millions of people down, and Times Square, and you only saw a few people at the best. So again, people are being stuck inside, or not being able to party or hang out and do different things. You see it. We took the bus the other day to go up to the doctors, and we found people. It was really cold last week. All the people sitting outside in one of the restaurants, and it's freezing cold because they're freezing cold because they feel stuck and they want to get outside. And this is like in the morning. I'm talking 10 o'clock in the morning, and the place is packed, and it's freezing cold. They're sitting with their winter coats and their earmuffs, and they're cutting chocolate lattes and having their breakfast because they feel so stressed out. So yeah, I do see a big difference.
All right, I'm gonna. So, do you think that this COVID blues? I'm just gonna call it the COVID blues.
It's
Do
the
you
COVID
think?
winter blues. Yeah, the
Yeah,
COVID
COVID
blues.
winter.
There you go. Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, with the winter, do you feel like it's so bad and people are so angry because there's no end or timeline? Like with winter blues, eventually spring is gonna come, and then there's like everybody gets happy and the sun is out. You get longer days of sunlight. But do you feel like it's just people are angry because there's just no end, or they
Well,
couldn't foresee?
to me, I'm sorry. I think it's a couple of different things. I think the fact that people are looking at unemployment running out, the rent sets the problems, people paying rent, paying bills, feeding their families. I think, yeah, they look at there's no end to there's no end to it, and there's nothing positive coming out of it and stuff, and they're up and down with the $600 check, a $2,000 check, and this and that. So I think that when you're playing in people's minds that situation, their first inclination is to become defensive. And I think that as they become defensive, think of it this way: you see it on the streets. Look how angry people are when walking by. They're pushing people on the subways. People are not wearing masks, and they're pushing people on the tracks, and you see it all over the time. Then you get a bunch of people in certain parts of the city who are out partying, having a good time, and the police do nothing. I mean, you see this all the time. I think the important part is to recognize that what's really going on here. They're afraid of socializing. They're afraid to hang out with each other. Humans need to touch and talk with each other. We all know that. And that's part of what life is about, is to talk and touch with each other and to be around each other. Yeah. So everyone's afraid to socialize. I mean, in our building, there was they only wanted one person on the elevator, social distancing, which is understandable. And you would see 2 and 3 people on the elevator. And then now they came out with 2 people on the elevator. And one person on the elevator and another person gets on, they stop them. They put their hand out and stop. What are you talking about? It's 2 people on the elevator. No, I don't want you on the elevator. It's like they own that space. So you're seeing a lot of anger, a lot of frustration because of the social distancing. People are taking it too far, going into stores and not wearing a mask. Some people do have medical conditioning. Some things happen, yes, to a certain point, breathing that negativity into the mask. You can't wear a mask 24/7. It's not healthy for you. We all understand that. But yeah, so I think the area of anger and frustration of not being able to socialize, talk with each other, touch each other, is causing a major problem in our society today. Yes, I agree with that.
Well, I think, it is a difficult time, and we've never lived through anything like this. But I think it's also a good time to, like you mentioned before, to identify what's really going on with you, like what's the root cause of these things. And then, I like to be optimistic. Everything has an end and everything is temporary, so there will be a change. Like, this won't last forever. It's just, I think, it's forcing us to be more mindful of ourselves and what we're going through.
But if I may say, Myrna, I agree with you to a certain point in that. But the problem with that is that when you come home at night and there's an eviction notice on your door, or your door's locked, or you can't buy groceries for your kids, or you can't use your credit card because it's maxed out, or certain things. Yeah, there's an end to a certain point, but in the moment, people are struggling, and I think that's causing more anxiety because they don't know when that moment's going to end. And I think that's in the moment is I think where more and more people are focused versus looking at the end result, because it's important to understand how fragile individuals are.
No,
what's
I agree with you 100%, and I think that's is why we're seeing all this political unrest and all the things, there has to be changes made. I
I
agree.
mean, yeah, in broad daylight. I mean, 57th, 58th, 59th Street, where the subway is, there's like a food emporium down there where they have different shops and things. And people are robbing these places in broad daylight, not at night, in broad day. They're actually robbing these stores in broad daylight. They're pushing people on the tracks in broad daylight because someone will say, put your mask on. And people are flipping out. So I think the area of danger and fear also is growing to a point where people don't want to walk out anymore, don't want to be part of society, which is scary. So yeah, there is an end result to a certain point, but I believe a lot of people are wondering why, when.
So, I mean, I guess the best thing for us to do now is, like you said, I mean, what would you recommend? Like, this is the reality we're living in.
You have to be very vigilant of what's going on around you and cautious and be careful of getting in other people's business and be careful and watching your back because you never know how fragile people are and how fragile and how people are going to respond to different things. I mean, you see it all the time, unfortunately. Some people need that platform, they need that stage to act out. I mean, I see that and I understand that to a certain point. But again, sometimes it goes a little bit overboard with people getting themselves hurt. The road rage. I mean, you see it all the time. Street rage.
So
So
I guess,
I
I
recommend to be
guess
very vigilant and very careful about what you're doing, what you're saying. Stay focused on your health and your family. I
yeah,
recommend that.
I mean, I agree with you. You can only control what your reaction is and the way you behave. So I think
Right, and not overreact. Yeah, I agree.
it's just about, like you said, more self-awareness and focus on your health and your own family and your situation.
Absolutely.
And, and I guess also communicating with your friends and people. You can socialize even at a distance. Unfortunately, you can't be in person, but it's good to always keep in touch, I think, with
Sure.
people.
Absolutely.
Or have
Absolutely.
an outlet to, just have someone to talk to or to change your mindset. I think those are important things to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, so do we have any other questions? No? Okay, great. So I think we're pretty much done. I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about, we're doing a workshop every month. And next month we are doing one called New Year's reboot your resolution, because we all start the year out with these high goals and expectations of ourselves. And come February, usually most people tend to like drop the ball and then go back to the way it was. So we're going to talk about some basic practical tips and strategies to help you stay focused and on your New Year's resolution, or just, every day is a new beginning. So we could talk about some health tips or basic exercise that you could set realistic goals in terms of your health, the exercise, diet, your mindset. And then March is Women's Health Month. So we're going to focus a little bit more in particular on nutrition and uh, mindset in terms of women health, what are key for women. And then we will have upcoming events throughout the year. So I think that's pretty much it for now. Here's our contact info. If you guys want to get in touch with me or Dr. Jamie, you can reach us via email or on our websites. And I do have a promo going on right now for some of my health and wellness packages. So if you sign up for one of the package, you could get a 10% discount using the code WINTER. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Myrna, for having me. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Okay, so I think everyone have a good rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you next month.